Hey everybody, Blast Cat Badger here. So, getting a little bit back onto the ballin train, so to speak. Before I jump into it though, a huge amount of y'all are not subscribed. A huge amount. But you come back to the channel and you watch stuff, sometimes comment, or very more often than not comment, but you're not subscribed. I don't know what else to tell you except to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Uh, try to actually subscribe right now. There's a little red and white button down there that says subscribe. Click it real fast. Click the buttons in front of it and behind it. And then, yeah, let's jump into what we want to jump into. So we got MrBallen. Dead girl comes back to life. This should be an interesting one, I think. All right, MrBallen. Take it away.
Story is the definition of creepy. It starts somewhat normally, but then slowly spirals into absolute insanity. It is definitely one you will remember. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please go into the like button's fridge and dump out their 2-liter of Coke, and then refill the bottle with flat root beer. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
You know what, people? Just stop drinking soda in general. That's what I'd say. And then you avoid pranks like this happening to you, right?
To get into today's story, I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, HelloFresh. The primary reason my diet periodically turns into Diet Cheeto smoothies and deep-fried licorice popsicles is because I get lazy. It's like, do I want to make another horrible trip to the grocery store? Or do I want to suck down another Sour Patch Kid covered in ice cream? Obviously, I'm taking the latter. But a couple of years ago, I discovered a way to eat healthier.
The way he gets that across is just hilarious. Because you don't know if he's serious or not, but he's so good at like keeping that mystery about it. You know what I'm saying?
Out the dreaded trip to the grocery store. And that's with HelloFresh. HelloFresh sends you this neat little box full of meals, and they have tons of choices from fairly intricate to 20-minute quick and easy recipes. But the catch is, the meals aren't made yet. You need to make the meals, but that's good because it ensures freshness and you
Okay, sorry, MrBallen, but I'm gonna skip this. Let's go.
can meals and 3 surprise gifts. Okay, let's get into today's story. In 1889,
Love MrBallen's intro.
when Karl Tanzler was just 12 years old and living with his family in Dresden, Germany, he had a very strange dream. In this dream, he found himself in this black void where everywhere he looked, it was just nothingness. And then behind him, he heard footsteps. And so he whips himself around and he looks, and there's this woman dressed in this big, puffy, elegant white dress walking towards him out of the darkness. And when she walks right up in front of him, she comes to a stop, and she introduces herself as Anna Constantia von Brockdorf, who was a real person in the early 1700s. She was a noblewoman in Germany, and she would tell Karl that she is actually a distant relative of his, and that she was here to pass on a very important message. Karl was rooted to the spot. He didn't know if he should be afraid of what she was going to say, or excited, or nervous, but before he could decide, Anna had already turned and was pointing in the direction she had appeared out of. And so Karl turns and looks in the direction she was pointing, and out of this blackness, out of this void, came this woman's face. It was a face detached from a body. It almost looked like a floating picture of a woman's face. And as this face floated closer and closer to them, Karl was immediately struck by just how beautiful this woman was. Her hair was jet black like a raven's feathers, and her
Okay, either this man has like a serious, like very incredibly powerful imagination, or maybe some type of inebriating or intoxicating substance, probably a psychotropic. Or, I don't know, maybe there's something else that could explain. You know what? Y'all just tell me what you think in the comments. Y'all just tell me what you think. Because so far, this sounds like a really great trip. This sounds like a really good trip. Like, you got one woman coming up to you, then you have the most beautiful face of another come up to you. Like, as a man, what's better than that? You know what I'm saying? What's better than that?
Skin was white like porcelain, but there was something off about this woman, this floating face. She looked sad and kind of frail. And so as Carl found himself staring at this face, which was now right next to them, Anna spoke to him again, and she would tell Carl that this woman, the floating face, she's going to appear in your life later on, and it is your mission given by God to save her. She's going to be very ill, very sick, and you need to find a way to keep her alive. Then
Okay, or maybe this is an unhealthy obsession of some kind. No, Bub, no, don't be a white knight. Don't be that way. No, no. Well, then again, this was a different time. But then again, uh, you know what? I have no idea. I have no idea. Let's continue.
Then Carl, in real life, woke up, and immediately he was struck by just how visceral that dream had been. It really felt like that had just happened to him, but after a few moments it seemed like, okay, that was just a dream. But unlike other visceral dreams he had had in the past, this one did not gradually fade from his memory. Instead, over the course of that day, the memory specifically of the raven-haired woman's face really seemed to become more clear and more concrete in his mind, to the point where at the end of that day, he could easily remember exactly what she looked like. Over the following days and months and years, Carl periodically would have this same dream, this same vision of his distant relative Anna, who would come out of the void, and she would remind him to be on the lookout for this raven-haired woman when God sent her to him. But despite these constant reminders in his dreams, and Carl being ever vigilant to look for this raven-haired woman in real life, he never actually found her. He never met this woman he was supposed to save. Fast forward to 1926. Carl was 39 years old. By this point, he had gotten married, not to the raven-haired woman, but instead to a local woman in Dresden. And the pair had had 2 daughters together, and they lived a simple life. And, by and large, Carl seemed rather content and happy with his life. However, secretly, he was a little disappointed that these dreams, these visions that he was having of Anna and the raven-haired woman, that they had not come true, that it really had just been a dream. That year, due to an economic downturn in Germany, Carl and his family left Germany and emigrated to the United States, where they believed there would be better opportunities for them. And when they arrived in the United States, they settled in Central Florida, but within a year, Carl and his wife had a severe falling out and they split up. And so Carl would leave the family home in Central Florida, and he would resettle several hundred miles south in Southern Florida in a town called Key West. And it would be in Key West that Carl would get a job as an X-ray technician at a local hospital, and it would also be in Key West that Carl's life would change forever.
So maybe everything was pointing to an eventuality of some kind? Okay, maybe I'm just like reading too much fiction with a little sprinkling of like real physics in the mix. I'm trying to remember this thing. I'm very bad at this. I know there's going to be someone in the comments who's much better at remembering all the stuff about physics and like the stuff that's derived into from physics that's put into story. But there's like a concept where there's like some kind of direct like linear connection between a past event that will affect a future event and make it an eventuality of some kind. Or it's like some sort of theory or something or a hypothesis about it. But I have entirely forgotten it. I've entirely forgotten it. Oh well. Oh well. So someone in the comments is going to let me know. But it sounds like maybe there's the possibility that this guy did get a pager of some kind placed in his head that reminds him every so often, hey, there's this thing you're gonna do, and it just keeps on going, and it's eventually leading somewhere, right? Mucho curioso.
Less than a year after settling in Key West, Carl was at the hospital going about his day when an older woman walked into the office, and she said to Carl that she was there to get her daughter, her 21-year-old daughter, an x-ray of her chest because her daughter apparently couldn't stop coughing and they were concerned about it. And so Carl began doing the paperwork with the mother when suddenly the daughter came into the office. And as soon as Carl saw her, he knew immediately that she was the raven-haired woman from his dreams. She walked in and she sat down in a chair, and Carl just stopped what he was doing and stared at the daughter. And then he kind of broke out of it and turned his attention back to the mother, and he said to her, "Ma'am, don't worry. I will do everything in my power to save your daughter's life." Now, the mother didn't know what was wrong with her daughter, and so this was both really helpful that this man she was talking to was so willing to help, and also kind of ominous that he was already insinuating that she could be dying. But either way...
So, okay. Okay. So, this guy, sees the person from his, whatever, his fever dream or his obsession or psychotropic trip, whatever it was, that he's constantly been having all these years. He sees her and he's like, and now he's making the parent go, can you imagine? Just imagine going into the doctor's office and then, the doctor, sees your kid and they're like, "I will try to save them." And you're like, okay, let's keep going.
The mother said, "Thank you very much. We really appreciate that." Mother, they finished their paperwork, and then Carl quickly left from behind his desk and hustled over to the daughter, and he introduced himself and he reiterated that she was in good hands. And the daughter was a little bit weirded out by this, but she was polite and said thank you, and she said her name was Elena. And so Carl would take Elena and bring her back and give her the x-ray, and unfortunately he would discover through this x-ray that she had tuberculosis. Today, that disease is easily curable, but at the time, that was a death sentence. When Carl saw this, though, in a weird way, it almost made him happy because this was another indication that, this really was the raven-haired woman from his dreams. Not only did she look the part, but she also had arrived in desperate need of help. And so now Carl needed to find a way to save her, even though he was just an x-ray technician. He was not a doctor, and so he had no clue how to begin to treat tuberculosis. But that didn't stop Carl. Over the next year, Carl would be in touch with Elena and her family on a near daily basis, updating them on all of the new techniques to fight tuberculosis that he was doing all this research on, and he would tell them about experimental procedures and drugs they could try, even sometimes paying out of pocket for them to go try them. He would also bring Elena into the office as often as he possibly could to x-ray her again and again and again to see if perhaps she was making good progress. But unfortunately, over the course of that year where he was doing everything he could, it just didn't work. The disease ravaged Elena's body, and on October 31st, 1931, so roughly a year after Carl had first met Elena, Elena would unfortunately pass away. Elena's family was devastated by this, but their grief didn't even compare to Carl's grief. It was like Carl had lost his life too. He couldn't believe he had failed his mission and let the raven-haired woman die. When it came time to bury Elena, Carl said, "Let me pay for the most elaborate gravesite we can possibly make. Let me set up a mausoleum for her." A mausoleum is an external building that sits in a cemetery that effectively serves as a kind of shrine to the deceased. And so her family, they understood that Carl had become very, very very close with Elena, although they didn't fully understand the relationship, but they did.
You know, I can't help but like get a certain sense of foreboding. Like like with so many of MrBallen stories. Okay, so this one says dead girl comes back to life, right? But what if she comes back to like I keep on thinking like, okay, there's going to be a supreme catch somewhere. Like she's comatose for an hour in a near death state for some reason. But then she's going to come back to life, but she's trapped in like a concrete box. And I'm like, am I morbid and evil because of that? Someone let me know, because to me that just sounds really funny and just really, like, it's funny because it would be just a terrible irony, an unfortunate circumstance. But at the same time, it's like, it's like she comes back to life and she's trapped in a box and she dies anyway. So it's like, what?
They did understand she meant a lot to him, and so they agreed to let him do this. After Elena was buried inside of this small temple that Carl had built for her, Carl began spending virtually all of his time kneeling inside of it, crying and begging for Elena's forgiveness. Elena's family was well aware that Carl was doing this, and at first they kind of just let it happen, but after several months they began to tell Carl, you really need to let her go. You need to begin to move on. But Carl refused. In fact, over time, he only became more and more obsessed with Elena. Finally, after 7 years of Carl...
Okay, so I was right. He was obsessed, but not in the way I was thinking. Or am I thinking of being possessive? Is that another thing? Someone let me know. I'm a dumbass. I really like possession versus obsession when it comes to focusing on another person. What's like the major differences between the two? Or are they not mutually exclusive? Somebody give me a deeper like distinction between the two.
Carl doing this, Elena's family decided, enough is enough. He really needs to stop making her loss all about him. It's not his loss, it's our loss. We're her family. And so the family decided the only way to kind of get Carl to stop doing what he was doing is to demand he give the key back that gave him access into the small area inside of the mausoleum. So one night, Elena's sister, whose name was Florinda, decided...
Wait, if it's been 7 years since she essentially died, how on earth is she coming back from that one? I mean, seriously. That's like freaking vampiric level type of like rising from the dead kind of stuff, I would think. Unless she's like in a supreme coma or something. No idea. No idea. Let's continue.
Decided to go over to Carl's house unannounced and confront him and get the key back from him. And so she hopped in her car and she drove over to his property. His house was kind of set back off the road behind some trees, and so you had to drive down this kind of winding driveway to get to it. And so Florinda turned onto his driveway and she began driving, and when his house came into view, the first thing she noticed was a number of the windows on the first floor were all lit up. Clearly Carl was home, and as she's driving towards the house, she's just looking in these windows, and for a a second, she sees Carl, and he's very elegantly dressed in a suit or a tuxedo, and he's ballroom dancing with this woman who's also very elegantly dressed as well. And for a second, Florinda considered turning around and not disturbing him, but then she thought, you know what, this has been going on for so long, I just need to get this over with. And so she drove her car and stopped in front of Carl's house. She hopped out, she walked up onto his porch, and she knocked on his front door.
No. No. Don't tell me do not tell me that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to keep quiet on it. I'm going to keep quiet. Let's keep going. I'm going to shut up.
Front door. Inside, she could hear music was clearly playing, but just a few seconds after she had knocked, the music was cut off, and then no one came to the door. And so Florinda knows there's people inside this house, and so she knocks again, but again, there's no movement in the house. It's just silent, as if the people inside are pretending not to be there. And so finally, frustrated, Florinda knocks on the door a third time and says, Carl, I know you're in there. I have to talk to you about my sister. Please come out here. And so finally, she heard the shuffling of feet, and then she heard the sound of the door unlocking, and it opened up just a crack. And through this crack, Carl looked through, and he looked out at Florinda very suspiciously, and he said to her, what do you want? And Florinda would say, look, I'm here to talk to you about my sister. Can I please come inside for a second, or can you come out here and talk to me? But Carl pretty much immediately said no, and then he shut the door. However, before he shut the door, Carl had very briefly stepped out of the way, allowing Florinda to see through that gap into the house. So before the door actually shut, she got to see who and what was inside that house. And what she saw was the woman Carl had been dancing with, and the woman was seated in a chair maybe halfway through the house, and she was facing the door, and Florinda knew immediately it was her sister. And so she's standing on the porch having no idea what to make of what she's just discovered. And so feeling kind of overwhelmed, she just kind of staggered off the front porch, she turned around, she ran into her car, and she drove off to tell the police. When the police came back, they knocked on the front door, and they demanded that Carl let them see the woman he was there with. And so at this point, Carl knew the gig was up, and so...
Wait a minute. Give me a sec to take a guess. She has been alive all this time. And I'm guessing like they're together now or something, or they have been together for a while or something. But to hide this secret... But then how would he do... Okay, somehow... I'm unable to come up with any type of huge guess. So let's just hear what's going on.
He opened the door and he allowed them to come inside. And when the police went inside, they saw the woman he was with, and sure enough, it was Elena. However, Elena was deceased and had been for 7 years. After her death, Carl said he was able to talk to her inside of her mausoleum, and so that was why he was going back there every single night, because he and Elena were spending time together. And then at some point in 1933, so 2 years after Elena has been dead and buried, Carl would say she told him while he was visiting her mausoleum that she didn't like being in the mausoleum and that she wanted to come back with him and stay at his house. And so the following day, Carl had shown up with a child's wagon, and he pulled her out of her coffin, pulled her out of the mausoleum, put her corpse in this wagon, and wheeled her back to his house. He had continued to go to the mausoleum every night for the next 5 years just to keep up appearances, but Elena's body never went back inside of it. She would stay at his house, where he painstakingly attempted to restore Elena's very badly decomposed body to its original form. He strung piano wire through her entire body, connecting all of her bones together to keep her skeleton.
Oh, no. No. Okay, so it was what I...
Intact.
So it was what I had... It's what I had basically guessed at the beginning, that I said I would shut up about. That he was so obsessed... I'm guessing he's obsessed and possessive. He was so... I don't know, deluded deep into this that he stole her corpse That's what I was going to say much earlier when I was like, don't tell me he, and then I was like, you know what, I'll shut up. Because I was trying so hard to give the benefit of the doubt. Because the dude, from the beginning, sounds quite much like a loon. Like he is insane. Like he's crazy. But at the same time, he was like, I'm going to do everything I can to save her. And then him supposedly going to her tomb after she died. And just for 7 years, just bawling himself to sleep. I was like, okay, maybe it's not that bad, but it's even worse. It is even worse.
He replaced her eyes with glass eyes, and he began rubbing the special wax all over her skin. He also stuffed her insides full of rags in order to give her a full, natural look, and he constantly sprayed her with perfume to reduce the smell. Once she was, in his eyes, back to normal, he began spending as much time with her as he possibly could. He would change her outfits constantly, he would put on makeup, and he would give her new jewelry, and he would talk to her about the ups and downs of life. He would laugh with her, he would cry with her, he would sleep with her. Carl would admit that ultimately his goal with keeping Elena in his home was to eventually still save her life. He believed if he could somehow get her body up into the stratosphere, that the radiation up there would bring her back to life. And if he could do that, he would be fulfilling his God-given mission to protect her. But
Why is it like very often just ultra religious types? Why?
Carl never got a chance to launch her into the stratosphere. Instead, he was charged with wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization. However, these charges would be dropped and Carl would be set free. As for Elena, her body was returned to her family and they would bury her in Key West. So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode and you have
All the charges were dropped? What? Did he like plead insanity or something? Or did they just did they decide that he was insane? That left a few questions at the end right there.
and you haven't done this already, please go into the like button's fridge and dump out their 2-liter of Coke and then refill the bottle with flat root beer. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly 1 or 2 video uploads. We now have a podcast that puts out brand new, never before heard stories every Monday, and then also on Thursdays we put out remastered audio from YouTube videos. And so that podcast is called MrBallen Podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, anywhere you get your podcasts, you can find it. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me a direct message on any major social media platform. My username is the same on all of them, at MrBallen, and I really do read the bulk of my messages. We have 2 additional YouTube channels. We have MrBallen Shorts, where we post random short videos and lost episodes, and we have a new channel called MrBallen en Español, and it's a Spanish language channel. We also have a Facebook page called MrBallen that puts out near daily content, as well as a Snapchat channel that puts out content every Sunday. We have some really cool merchandise, so if you want to have a look, head on over to shopmrballen.com. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, podcasts, additional YouTube channels, wherever, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
All right, there we go, folks. There we go. MrBallen. Dead girl comes back to life, but not in the way anybody would have thought coming back to life really meant. Bub. Bub. What's that saying? Hide your kids, hide your wife, or some stuff? Okay, so, well, there we go. What did y'all think? What did y'all think? Y'all already got everything I thought about it. So, yeah, just tell me in the comments down below what your thoughts are. Uh, and then, you know, just like, man, I hope none of you have to go through something like this. I hope so. I hope none of you. Anyway, that being said, y'all know what time it is. You like the video. You like MrBallen. You like seeing me in my, you know, illustrious face. Then please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Then hit the real subscribe button called notification bell so you guys get videos when I post them up. Comment down below what you want me to cover next. And then if you want to get directly in touch with me, there's going to be a link to the Discord down in the description box down below. Go ahead and click it, join the Discord, get in there with all the other members of the channel. And then there's also a button behind the subscribe button called the join button. And just join at the single tier that's set up. That's really cheap. It's basically nothing per month. But that helps to maximize and support greatly the freedom of this channel so that I don't have to worry about copyright and I don't have to worry about like all the other ridiculous things that they put on the YouTube whatever. So please join and become a decent human on the channel. So that being said, be good. Seriously, be good. Don't be like this Carl character, please. I hope no one does. And be safe. Never compromise your safety and security. Never. And if you live in a place that does, well then leave that place. Go somewhere where you can ensure your own safety and security and nobody forces you to compromise on that. And make a good life for yourselves. You don't know what's going to happen in the next hour, 2 hours, day, week, month, year. You have no idea. So make the best of it that you can right now. That being said, okay, I also have a Twitch channel. That's going to be linked in the description box down below as well. And if you just search on Twitch, it's going to be the same exact name as used on this channel. So I hope to see y'all on there. That being said, this is Blast Cat Badger, and I will see y'all in the next one.